Following up from the last week, we are going to read stories about a late family member influencing the living. Last week's were about them playing a guardian angel, but this week would be about them playing an angel of death. I already talked about the dynamic of family obligation in Korea in the guardian angel stories, but as in any society, not everyone abide by the sense of responsibility. It's only human that some of us, actually many of us, end up being swayed by our own desire and emotional baggage. And I guess it goes the same with spirits too. In my episode 122, we read stories discussing what ghosts may be, and there a shaman comments ghosts of dead family members hanging around is invariably a bad news. They come back more often than not for their own goal rather than for the good of the family. Usually an unfulfilled desire, unresolved grudge, or even too much love that turned into an obsession. It's sad to think your granny who adored you in life should come back as an angel of death to take you away. But then it's very human perspective of Korean shamanism, that even in death and as a spirit, we are not really beyond the triviality of human life. So, here are 7 allegedly true stories about late family member coming back as an angel of death. As always, handpicked, translated and narrated by host, Anthony. My uncle on my mom's side had a bit of a wild youth. He depended on alcohol too much to the level of addiction, and the related complication rendered him almost blind. He eventually quit drinking, but it was a bit too late by then. Being almost blind, he could not work much, so he became a house husband while his wife went to work to provide for the family. Then, since when his wife came back home in the evening, Uncle started complaining.
"I don't want to be home alone. Some people come to visit me when you are not around."
"What? What visitors?" his wife asked.
"I don't know. You know I can't see well. Yet I can somehow make out they are a couple. An old man and a woman dressed in old-fashioned clothes."
Wife was alarmed. But who was going to make money if she should stay home for him? Uncle's complaint got more serious by day, and eventually to the point of tearful plea. In the end, she took her husband to the Buddhist temple and sought an opinion from the abbot.
"I think the visitors are your ancestors. You're not doing your part to carry on offering memorial rituals for them, even though you are the firstborn son. And they are coming to check on what's going on,"
the abbot said, and suggested a ritual to appease the upset spirit of the family ancestors. Uncle took the suggestion and offered a ritual where he kneeled down to apologize his neglect and promised he would offer regular memorial ritual from then on. At the end of it, he saw, or should I say he had a vision, of his ancestors sitting as in a family portrait and giving him a content smile. Indeed, the spirit stopped visiting him afterwards. But despite the promise, with time, Uncle got lazy again. He left the burden of preparing memorial rituals to his old mother and often didn't bother to attend it at all. And one day, when his wife came back from work one evening, he found him dead, alone home. There was no obvious reason of his sudden demise because he was perfectly fine up to that very morning. Nobody speaks it out loud, but my family thinks the angry spirits of the ancestors might have made one last visit and took Uncle with them. It's a story my grandpa told me when I visited him as a teenager. His home is in a small town in Jeolla province. My mom would say she found the town somewhat creepy from when she visited to meet her in-laws for the first time, so there might be something about the town itself too, perhaps. I don't know. Across the reservoir from my grandpa's place was a barber shop run by two brothers. That was the only barber shop in the vicinity, so it naturally served as a popular meeting point for the men in the village, meaning the whole village knew the brothers very well. They lost their mother 2 years prior, and made her tomb in the local cemetery, which was located between the barber shop and the brothers' home. One day, the brothers were walking near the cemetery on the way back home as usual, and they saw their mom standing in the cemetery ground. Brothers were shocked and somewhat happy to see her again at the same time, but the older of the brothers reminded himself that it was often not for any good when a late family member or ancestor should suddenly appear.
"Mother, I hear the dead and the living cannot mix. Please go and rest in peace,"
the older of the brothers said to his mother, and she quietly walked into the woods and disappeared. But their mom would still appear in that manner a few more times. It naturally stirred the brothers, and they sought opinions from elderly clients from the village. Many agreed it could be an ominous sign, and the older brother decided to move away from the village. But the younger brother didn't want to follow the suit. It was his hometown, and their mother was buried there. Why should he desert it? In the end, the brothers splitted the property, and the older moved away while the younger stayed behind. A few months passed. Townspeople noticed the barber shop remained closed for a few days and got worried. When they visited the younger barber's house, they found him dead in his room, crouched down. To add to the mystery, his body looked weirdly emaciated, unlike when he was alive just a few days prior. Townspeople believed that the dead man's mother, who adored her son so much, came back to take him away with her. When I was young, I attended a family gathering and peeped in uncles and aunts looking at the book of the family tree and talking about the good old days. I noticed there was an older brother to my dad whom I didn't know about. Later I asked Dad about this mystery uncle. He looked at me with a blank face a while before he opened his mouth again. As a young adult, Dad was a bit of a delinquent. Now, that explains why I am one too. And Grandma had quite some headache over him. One evening, Dad came back home once again, late and drunk. Grandma lost her temper and beat him with a fire poker. And Dad, whose temper was no less fiery, shouted swears at her and kicked the gate open to go out again. Then he saw an old lady standing outside next to the gate, somebody he had never seen in the village before. He just found it amusing that she looked all white hair and in a white dress. Their eyes met. The old lady sneered knowingly at him, and Dad, guessing she must have heard all the commotion earlier, bobbed his head to her with an awkward smile. He started walking away. Then he was seized by a sudden, inexplicable sense of panic, with all his hair standing on ends. He just ran to his mate's place, drank more with him till he passed out to sleep. Following day, he went back home once again near midnight and found the undertaker's lantern hung at the gate. He jumped in, fearing if his grandma passed away. But alas, the photo on the funeral shrine was that of his older brother. An aunt came up to Dad, who was frozen in shock, and smashed his back, shouting wherever he'd been while his brother passed away. Love of drink seems to be running in the family, and Dad's brother was no exception. On his drunk way back home, he jaywalked and fatally hit by a car. The call from the police rang shortly after Dad ran away from Grandma's beating. Dad somehow remembered that white old lady the night before and the creepy vibe she had. After the funeral, he asked others if such and such old lady had visited. Nobody seemed to have seen or indeed knew such a lady, until his oldest aunt said, "That sounds like my late grandmother. Could she have come to claim her great-grandson's life?" Apparently, Dad's great-grandmother, who passed away before he was born, had a totally white head in her later years and always wore white head to toe since she lost her husband. Who could tell if the old lady my dad saw that night was really his late great-grandmother, or, if it were true, why she should appear on the day his brother died. Dad seems to be still a bit traumatized about the experience. It's what my friend's family experienced. My friend's father was naturally healthy and sturdy guy. He rarely suffered the usual ailments. But he suddenly got poorly, complaining sudden bouts of fever and chills, followed by nausea and shivers. He visited the hospital too, but they failed to diagnose what was wrong. And before it all happened, his daughter, my friend's older sister, had the most bizarre dream. She saw a woman lurking around in front of their house. She went out to check and found this shady-looking woman staring into the house. Seeing the daughter, the strange woman tried to leave the scene in a hurry. The daughter stopped the woman and found her holding her dad's necklace. The woman's black dress and shady face made the situation all the more ominous, and the daughter hung onto the woman's hand.
"I let you have it back then, for today,"
said the woman, letting the necklace go, and then gave one more look at the house and the daughter before she disappeared quickly. It could have been just any old weird dream, but the thing is, the mother of the family also had a strange dream about the same time, and that definitely had more weight because she had certain spiritual sensitivity. My friend would confirm that there were more than several occasions that her warnings in the morning, like to be wary of cars or not to go to certain place, saved him from accidents or disasters. And this time in her dream, she saw her husband lying on the sofa and watching TV as he usually does. And behind him was sitting a strange woman, quietly staring at him. Friend's mom shouted at her, asking who she was and what she was doing there. But the strange woman just gave one glance at her and turned her eyes back to friend's father. Mom shouted and chased the woman away, and finally she reluctantly walked out, giving one last look back at friend's father as if to say,
I'll be back.
Mother knew it wasn't just a passing dream, especially when her husband got unexpectedly ill. But she wasn't yet sure what to do. Then one day, her mother, my friend's grandma, visited. Apparently, friend's mom's spirituality comes down from her mom, and as soon as the grandma stepped inside, she shouted,
What do you think you are doing here, you mad cow?
Everybody was stunned, but friend's mother remembered her own dream and got chills. Indeed, Granny walked straight to the sofa in the living room and carried on shouting at something.
Whom are you eyeing on, eh? Get out of here now! Out!
The shouting to the air carried on a few more minutes, and stopped only when Granny's stare moved from the sofa to the hallway and to the front door, as if making sure that something walked out of the house. It finally confirmed their ominous dreams were no ordinary matter, and Mom visited a Buddhist monk for an advice with her daughter.
Surely there must have been foreboding signs already. What took you so long to seek help?
The monk said. Both the mother and daughter were surprised to hear that, because neither of them hitherto mentioned about their dreams to the monk or indeed to each other. They finally talked about the dreams and were once again surprised that the description of the strange woman matched. The monk said the strange woman in their dreams was likely the late grandmother to my friend's father. People usually think the spirit of ancestors as the caring force and guardian angel figures, but apparently that wasn't always the case. The monk connected them to a reputable shaman, and in a few days they took the ailing father to shaman to perform a ritual. After some ritual dance, the shaman produced a porcelain ball and put it on the table upside down. Then she handed a kitchen knife to friend's mom, telling her to whack the ball with it. If the ball should break in 3 attempts, that was the sign that the haunting spirit had left. Mom hacked the ball with all her might, but it failed to make even a chip on the ball. She tried a couple more times with even more strength, but the ball stayed intact. The shaman's face turned grave.
The grandma ghost is stubborn. Her target should have been the ill man's father, but somehow the doom carried down to the next generation,
Shaman said. So the ritual wrapped up without a clear answer. As friend's mom cleaning up the aftermath of the ritual, she saw the porcelain ball from the earlier left on the table. Out of curiosity, she lightly tapped on it with a knife, and it cracked in half just like that. All the while, the condition of friend's father got worse and worse, until one day he passed out at his work. Doctors found a kidney stone which progressed into inflammation. Father had to be transported to a bigger hospital for an emergency operation. He recovered, fortunately, but the whole incident and the story of the resentful soul of an ancestor still remain as a mystery. My dad passed away when I was 16, exactly 6 months after we lost Mom. He died of alcohol poisoning triggered by Mom's death, which was also due to alcohol. Believe it or not, I have a bit of spiritual sensitivity. On the day Dad passed, I was at school, and yet I was struck by the sense of shock. I just knew. I cried and made a scene in the class that I had to go to see Dad right away. It was a few months later when I had this dream. There I was playing with Dad on bed in an all-white room. I just assumed we were in hospital. Dad spent his last days hospitalized. Dad then stood up and said, "Let's go now." I said yes, but all of a sudden, I felt so heavy and drowsy so much that I could not even dare to stand up. Dad, I'm so drowsy. Could I just have a short nap first? Dad said all right and let me lie back down. Next moment, the white room turned into my bedroom, and I saw Dad walking to the front door. He opened it to go out, and there were a few black shadow people waiting for him. In my drowsy mind, I wondered who they could be, but I just concluded they might be some relatives before I fell asleep. And that was when I woke up. I reassessed what I just dreamt and got chills that Dad might have come back to take me with him. I was more sad than scared. Why, Dad? Didn't I do my best to take care of you while you were ill? That was the last time I saw him in my dream. But what a bitter last encounter that was. June 2003. My dad was hospitalized in a university hospital in Seoul. Everybody expected an advanced lung cancer. He looked like death already, so dark and gaunt that even the fellow patients in the same ward didn't chat him up. At the time, my older sister was the only family member in Seoul. She was just over 20 and still fresh in the big town herself, but took up the hard job of caring for Dad without a complaint. 10 days passed, but there was no sign that Dad would get any way better. Exhausted, Sister fell asleep with her head on Dad's side. Suddenly, Dad got up from his bed. "Come with me," Dad said to Sister. He could move again? Was he feeling better now? Sister wondered, but nevertheless followed Dad. Where they arrived was a big family gathering. Everybody was there, aunts, uncles, and even late Grandma. They were all enjoying a feast, and my sister joined the festivity. But when she looked around again, she realized that Dad and Grandma weren't there anymore. Sister reminded herself of the checkup Dad needed to take every 2 hours and got out to search for Dad. She ran around quite a while until she saw a hill obscured with thick fog. The hill was covered with a spindly grass, and a narrow winding path ran over it next to a stream running alongside. She went up and looked around for Dad. What she saw were people, sparsely dotted along the winding path, all of them going to one direction. And among them were Grandma and Dad. Grandma was now wearing a black dress, and Dad a white shirt and a black trousers. Sister ran to them and told Dad that he had to go back to get the bi-hourly checkup. Dad said he would, and told Sister she should see Grandma off in his place. So Dad walked back, while sister kept following Grandma. But sister's mind was still on Dad's checkup. Usually she had to be there to assist Dad because by then he found it difficult even to stay sit-up. And just then, she also noticed Grandma in front of her was not her late grandma. The old lady looked still somewhat familiar, but she certainly wasn't Grandma in any case. She just said to the old lady's back, "I'm sorry, but I think I should go. Dad needs my assistance. Please excuse me," and ran back following Dad. Then she woke up. She checked the time and saw she dozed for about half an hour. And right that day, it was determined it was not lung cancer that Dad was suffering. It was a very bad case of a lung infection that formed 9 large boils. Now with the correct treatment, Dad recovered quickly and could get discharged a week later. A month passed. Sister came to visit home. That day, Sister accompanied Dad to the pharmacy in town, and on the way back, Dad took a different route than usual over a mountain. And Sister recognized the winding road along a reservoir. It was the path she saw in her dream. Apparently, the road leads to our family cemetery too. And that evening, Sister lied down to have a nap, and her eyes caught one photo among many small family photos hanging on the wall. It was that of the late great-grandmother. And it hit her that it was she that she saw in her dream. Great-grandma came to take Dad away to the family cemetery. What would have happened if my sister didn't stop them in time? What if she followed great-grandma all the way? My mother's father passed away shortly after I was born. His lifelong love was drinks, more so than his family and even grandchildren. Even when he got his first grandson in his arms, his face was just meh. Soon he handed the baby back to his mom, saying he's meeting his friends for a drink. One night he came back home from such drinks and said to Grandma,
On my way back just now, I saw 3 strange guys at the edge of the village. They smirked, seeing me. I can't shake off the feeling they were Grim Reapers.
You drank so much that you are seeing what's not there. Stop drinking so much and bothering me with the nonsense,
Grandma grumbled back.
Maybe it's time. But I don't want to go alone,
Grandpa said, looking out the darkness outside the window. I guess Grandma sensed some unusual vibe from him that night and talked about it to her children. My aunt, Mom's sister, assured Grandma that it was just alcohol, saying it was nothing unusual from their alcoholic father, was it? Such was the assurance Grandma needed, but deep inside, she seemed still concerned. A few days later, Grandpa was hospitalized. Apparently, he was found unconscious inside a narrow drain pipe. People just assumed he might have fallen there somehow on his drunken way back home. He didn't gain consciousness even after he was sent to hospital, which prompted doctors to perform various tests. What they found was a late-stage liver cancer. It had already spread it to other organs, and there wasn't much they could do anymore. What shocked the family further was when Grandpa finally woke up and doctor passed on the news of the cancer. He seemed totally unaffected, like he had been told that he got a common cold, as if he knew it all already. He didn't stop drinking even after the diagnosis, and passed away in his sleep not long after. On that very night of his passing, Grandma was woken up by the voice of Grandpa mumbling,
I don't want to go alone.
Huh? What did you say?
Grandma asked.
I don't want to go alone.
Grandpa was lying facing away from Grandma, and Grandma shot back to his bent, bony back.
That again. You're not going anywhere. Just sleep now.
Should I go first? I'll come back to take you then. I will.
And that was his last word. It left Grandma paranoid since Grandpa's funeral. Even with a cut she got while working on the field, she'd say,
Look at this. Your father's trying to take me away. I tell you.
Her children got a bit tired when their mom's paranoia continued for months, and just brushed her anxiety with,
Mom, just forget it. Dad couldn't have meant that.
Grandma reacted to that with growing resentment.
You're on your father's side, aren't you? You'll forget it was me who raised you up, while your alcoholic father couldn't care less.
Then one day, Uncle, my mom's younger brother, saw Grandma put on her Sunday best from the early morning and went out. He and his sister actually welcomed that because they thought she was finally shaking her paranoia away and going out for socializing. But it soon turned to concerns when Grandma didn't come back till late night. Then they got a call from the local police station that their mother was there. Mom, her sister, and brother all rushed to the station and found their mother a mess, as if she'd been rolling about on a mud pit.
Mom, where have you been? What happened to you?
Mom asked.
Your dad came to take me,
Grandma said. Mom's built-up anxiety and concern bursted out as an anger.
Stop it, Mom! He's dead! How much longer are you holding on to him?
Mom taunted. But when the police explained where they found Grandma, even Mom and her siblings could not shake off a chill, because Grandma was found in the narrow drain pipe, the same place where Grandpa was found. Not long after, Grandma passed away in her sleep. Hi, it's Anthony here, and thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. I wonder if stories about dead families' influence reaching out is common in other cultures too. I think last and this week's stories do reflect the strong family dynamic of Korean culture. The more paranormal stories I read over the years, the clearer it gets to me that when the time comes to go, it's best to be ready to let go. Not just hate and grudge, but also love and obsession. Very Zen Buddhism, I think. If you enjoyed my work, please give it a thumbs up and a comment, and please consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't yet. If you'd support me more directly, I also have a Buy Me a Coffee account. The link's in the description. Buy Me a Coffee supporters enjoy an early access to my new video. Thank you. Until next Sunday, stay safe and take care.